Hi, everyone. September 8th, as it were, Thursday, 11 a.m. Welcome to 30 Minutes with Spyglass Lending, as always, but of course, especially, we have an incredible guest today. We have an award-winning Los Angeles realtor with us, a 10-year veteran. She's got a great story. She's going to tell us all about what she's got going on and, of course, enlighten us to what's happening out there in the industry. As always, please welcome Jamie Tian. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for having me today. I'm glad to be here.
I appreciate it as always. Love to start with this. Got to hear your story, right? Got to get to know you right off the bat. Tell us a little bit about you and start as far back as you want to go.
Yeah, I guess. So I was actually born in China. So I'm a first generation immigrant. I moved to America when I was 5 years old. So my parents actually, they decided to come to the United States to get their PhDs. They're both civil engineers. And part of the reason was at the time in China back then, the government still owns all the property, but ever since the early 2000s, they've given people the ability to citizens, the ability to own property, but they're still on a 75-year land lease. But prior to the early 2000s, you couldn't buy or even rent property. You were just assigned it by the government, and they kind of did it based off of like seniority. So both of my parents at the time were working as professors at the college that they had graduated from in Nanjing, and they just weren't high enough in the ranks yet to get assigned housing. So they literally had nowhere to live. Their families, they expect you to kind of live with your families or find someone to live with, but their families were living in different cities far away from the city that they were in. So they literally had nowhere to live. They had to live in their research lab that they worked in during the day. So they just kind of put a mattress in there, and that's where they stayed at night. And when I was born, that's where they were living. So, they kind of realized that staying in China, they probably wouldn't be able to really, make the life that they wanted. And they wanted some kind of a better opportunity for me and for themselves. So they both decided to get their PhDs in engineering, and they applied to a bunch of different schools in America. And my dad got accepted to the University of Oklahoma, and my mom got accepted to the University of Pittsburgh. So they had to kind of do long distance for a couple of years because that's just kind of where they could get scholarships to and what they could, afford at the time. So I stayed behind with my grandparents for a few years first while they came over here and kind of try to set up base and like establish themselves before a couple of years later, I came with my grandparents to America, and I landed in Norman, Oklahoma. So that's where my first experience in America was in Norman for a couple of years there. And then our family relocated to Southern California and settled in Irvine. And starting from around age 9 or 10, I grew up in Irvine. So, that's kind of my childhood story. So that's kind of why homeownership is really important to me because, it's like the American dream, seriously. Yeah. And it's like it really is the land of opportunity. It's cliche, but it really is. And it gave my family the opportunity to kind of like establish ourselves. But so after high school, I attended college at UCLA, and I actually majored in environmental science. At the time, I thought I was going to go into law and go to law school. I was working at a law firm as like a legal assistant, and I completed my LSATs, applied for law school, all of that. And then during my last year at UCLA of my undergrad, I just after I finished all the applications, everything, I decided I wanted to get my real estate license, kind of like for fun. I just thought maybe I could do it as a summer job, a side gig.
And you were thinking about this while being a college student.
Yes, I was 20 years old at the time when I got licensed. It was my last two quarters at UCLA, and last year, senior year, course load's a little lighter, and then I had finished all my grad school applications, so I was like, why don't I just do this kind of like for fun, and then I can always, help my family or friends if they need a realtor, do a deal here and there. So,
by the way, was there some impetus that led you this way? Was there a mentor who kind of pushed you in this direction, or you just came to this conclusion yourself?
So I came to the conclusion myself. I didn't have a mentor or anything, but I've always as a child, when my parents would like go to open houses all the time just for fun to check out, after we finally bought our first house, it was so important to them. Like when there was new houses for sale in our neighborhood. We go to like all the open houses, check out everything. So I love that experience. And then honestly, this is kind of embarrassing, but when I was in college, like $1 million listing kind of came about.
Yeah.
And it was happening literally around me, right? Because I was like in Westwood and there's Bel Air, Holmby Hills, Beverly Hills around me. And I'm driving around town. I would see the signs of the people on $1 million listing. I was like, this is so cool.
Yep.
And I'm like, I kind of want to just try, get into it, see what I can do. So I just got my license. I dove right into it. And then I joined Rodeo Realty. And then I closed a couple of deals before I graduated from UCLA. And it was awesome, obviously. I mean, at the time I was working at a law firm, making $12 an hour, and I got my first commission check, and I'm like, this is amazing. I love this. And I love like working with people. So I decided not to go to law school. It was a very hard decision, and my parents were like very upset at the time. They're both PhDs, and they're very, very focused on education. So they wanted me to do some sort of higher learning, engineer, doctor, lawyer. So I told them I wanted to do this. I really love real estate. They were like, you could just do it on the side, finish your law school. You could always go back to this later. But I just thought like, no, I have like momentum right now. I love it. I enjoy it. And I'm like, I could always go back to law school later too.
Right.
So I decided to after I graduated, I just went full time into real estate. And now 10 years later, here I am.
I mean, that is a pretty amazing story. And, you don't often hear that, right? It usually is the opposite way. Oh, okay, well, I'll just get my license on the side, and then I'm going to ultimately stick to what maybe I started out with, and then I'll come back to this if it's working. But you had such an amazing taste of success so early, it sounds like. Hard to give up, like you said. I mean, I'm hearing you say at $12 an hour working at a law firm. How long was that going to last, or how much debt would you ultimately go into if you had to try to become a lawyer and all of that, and all of a sudden you're making good commission checks? But by the way, were they listings, or were you working with buyers those first few deals?
The first couple of deals, definitely buyers. I think the first deal I did was $212,000. It was actually a condo in Sherman Oaks. I mean, I can't even believe you could get a condo in Sherman Oaks at the time for $212,000.
I was about to say, I mean, you're
around there, 212, 220 or something. And
right.
I mean, now I'm
like
sure
the 70s.
I'm sure it's worth like $600,000-700,000 now. But
least.
So it was like a little condo that I sold. And I just started slowly kind of working my way up in price range. And yeah.
No, it's amazing. We're going to jump back to this in a second. We're going to, of course, continue down the real estate conversation track. But something you brought up that would just really, struck with me that was incredible. Your parents came here before you. You were living with your grandparents back in China. And as you mentioned, I mean, they took this journey to one get set up in Norman, Oklahoma, and the other in Pittsburgh.
Right.
And then you came a few years later. How many years did it take before you came and joined them?
So about 2.5 years. They literally had never been to the United States before, even for vacation or anything. So they literally packed up a couple of bags.
Oh,
my
wow.
mom went to Pittsburgh. My dad went to Norman. They barely spoke English except for like a couple of English classes at university. So they had like broken English, really thick accent. Never even had American food or anything, and they didn't have each other. So they just went. They tried to get settled, like figure out where to live. Start.
Talk about a leap of faith.
Yeah.
and I think you mentioned you came over here at 5, so it was a full 2.5 years.
Yes.
That you were back in China. Do you remember any of this? Do you remember kind of being 2, 3, 4 years old without them?
I have like a certain few memories, but honestly, sometimes you don't know if they're really memories or just stories that your parents told you, or you're looking at the photos and things like that. So I think like I don't really have clear memories until when I was around 5, when I came to Norman, Oklahoma. I have clear memories of that, but I don't remember too much being in China.
Did they get a chance to visit you over that 2.5-year period? Were they able to come back to China? No. So they were here in the States. So it was a full 2.5 years separated from China. That must have been so hard.
They were getting close to finishing their PhDs, and so they decided that it was time for me to come. And then also they wanted to make sure that I came before kindergarten started, because they, just the later you start school in America, the harder it is to learn English and catch up. So, and when I came, I didn't speak a word of English either. And they just dropped me off at kindergarten, but they wanted to make sure that I did all of my schooling here in the United States. So that was like part of the reason too, is right before kindergarten started, I came over to do that. Yeah.
Oh, unbelievable. Okay. Thank you for enlightening us all to the rest of that story. That's incredible. And obviously back to just having graduated, joined Rodeo Realty, and just jumping right into that. And you mentioned obviously that you went to UCLA yourself. And, we were talking about this just before the show, but in a lot of your social media posting, I've noticed, you really branded yourself a Bruin, and taken off with that, a great pride there, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud to be a Bruin, and it's a great network, of course. And after I graduated from UCLA, I lived and farmed in Westwood for many, many years. So I kind of branded myself as a UCLA Bruin. And obviously, there's a lot of students, graduates, incoming, professors, people that work at the hospital. So it's a big community that, is affiliated with UCLA and the Bruins. So it's definitely been helpful in that. And yeah.
So I like to put a lot of timestamp on everything here. So you said you're a little over 10 years in the industry. I'm going to put us back into essentially 2012, 2013. That's what we're talking about, right? When you first kind of started and jumped in. So obviously 08, the Great Recession, 9, a little dead in the industry. But by 2010, we started seeing this big upswing and a lot of equity coming back and prices escalating and a lot of people doing a lot of things. Real estate investors especially. Were you working with any investors at the time? Was it around 2012 or 13, or was it all standard buyers and sellers?
Yeah, no, I was working with a lot of investors at the time. I think it was a great time to get into the market because the market was just going up and going up as I started getting more experience and building my resume and getting more clients. And the market was hot. And there was a lot of foreign investors. So I am Chinese, I speak Mandarin. So there was a lot of foreign investors that were coming in from China, investing around UCLA. Some of them were for their parents, for their students.
May I ask, was it just condos and single family, or were you working in any of the small balance multifamily space or any mixed use property?
Yeah. I mean, I do multi-use properties and a fourplex, fiveplex type situations. But overall, especially at that time, it was mostly just condos and single family. And honestly, I started off with mostly just condos.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a common tale as well. You hear that from a lot of real estate agents. You start in that respect, and then all of a sudden you just kind of springboard into that single family space, and then all of a sudden you're doing those luxury listings. I want to jump right to the big question. I mean, what's the biggest listing you've had? What's the biggest price tag you've had on a single family?
Biggest price point on a single family is about 15 million. So up in Beverly Hills in the Summit. And yeah.
Now, you talk about $1 million listing. I mean, that's as good as it gets. You think about anybody on that show, a lot of them have plenty just in the 1, 2, 3 million space. So they're lucky themselves, I know, when they're at 10 million plus. So that's incredible. Have you had a number of those in that atmosphere?
Just a couple. I do a lot. I would say that my average price point is probably like 2 or 3 million, and I do a lot of condos still. Even I have a listing right now for 525. So I would say I work with a big range of price points, and yeah.
Where are you farming mostly now?
So I still farm a lot in Westwood. It's just where I've been farming for, many, many years now. So that's kind of like my bread and butter. So both the single family homes and the condos there. When I first started off, I realized that probably would be easier to get into the condos first. So I actually just started just visiting and getting to know all the buildings. So, on the Wilshire corridor, just around town, getting to know each building, what amenities they offer, what's the price ranges, what are the HOA ranges. And when I first started off, actually, a way that I would get leads is I would go to brokers' open houses at the different buildings, kind of visit the building, take pictures, and I would blog about it.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, people eventually started contacting me. And even today, many, many years later, I'll still have people contact me on my blog posts from back in 2012 or 13 because they're just happen to be Googling, the Wilshire Grand or whatever, a certain building, and it comes up and they'll be like, oh, I saw that you have a listing there for 600,000. I'm like, well, it's like $1 million.
You're like, I did 9 years ago.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's incredible as well, because you think about the term blog or even newsletter and it feels archaic, but the reality is that still plays, right? I mean, there's something to be said. Are you still blogging at all? I mean, obviously, and we're going to talk in a moment about your social media and your presence and what you're able to accomplish there and your following, but are you blogging at all?
Yeah, I'm still doing it, but I'll be honest, I'm not doing it as often anymore. I just
Mhm.
don't haven't had the time to do it as religiously as I used to. But I really believe in it, so I do encourage other agents to do it, and I do like try to do it as often as I can.
Well, it seems to be if you're blogging them and you're really making a connection with the community, you're really drilling down into something specific that might speak to someone's heart. And as you said, somebody's going to pick up on that because social media obviously casting such a wide net. But let's talk about that for a second because you have a really big following. I mean, where you focus most of your efforts on? Are you Insta? Are you LinkedIn? I mean, how are you doing on Facebook, Pinterest? I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about where your focus is.
So I would say I focus on three areas of social media. So Instagram for sure, LinkedIn, and
Mhm.
Facebook. Those are the three that I really focus on. I have a TikTok and I'll post some videos on there every once in a while, but it's not really my forte. I find that each app or network has like a different type of audience. So I think that, like, for example, TikTok has a very young audience, mostly Gen Z or even younger.
For sure.
I would say Instagram is kind of like Instagram is now everyone is on it, but I would say like the millennials really like Instagram. Slightly older crowd really likes Facebook, so I make sure that I'm still on Facebook as well.
I mean,
And
who's going to have the $15 million listings? Probably not the millennials just yet, right?
exactly. Yeah. So, although you never know, there's a lot of rich millennials right now that have gotten rich. Although right now
A
the
lot of
market,
YouTube money out there.
yeah, but influencers, crypto money. There's a lot of young people that have figured out ways to make money. So
No
you'd be
doubt.
surprised.
No
But
doubt.
yeah, and then LinkedIn, I think obviously is a little bit more of a professional crowd. I actually have more followers. I have like almost 20,000 followers on LinkedIn, like 19,000 or something, and I've just slowly built up my LinkedIn over time. So a lot of people don't think about LinkedIn, but I actually use it a lot and I generate leads from it quite often.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. I mean, that's fascinating. You have the 20,000 followers. LinkedIn, obviously, to your point, thought of as more professional, more specific to business. Hey, do I get a job on here? But it's also a B2B platform, right? I mean, it feels like it's more business to business than it is business to consumer. But are you getting direct to the consumer or are you working with other realtors on there? I mean, when you talk about leads or you talk about lead generation, what are we talking about exactly on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I mean both. I would say that on LinkedIn, it's probably less so realtors and more actually the consumer. And I meet people all the time in person that are like, "Oh, you look familiar." Like this happened to me the other night. I went to an ARIA event, and it was like a town hall event, and it was a policy event, and they had a bunch of like local mayors and Congress people and council people that were running to come and kind of speak about what topics related to housing that their initiatives were focusing on. I met the previous mayor of Alhambra, and I found out she was like, "Oh, I think we're connected on LinkedIn," and
Mhm.
we didn't realize like we had been connected on LinkedIn for a number of years, and then we finally met in person. So that happens all the time. It just
We met
like
on LinkedIn. I mean, that's
yeah,
how as I mentioned, you kept popping up in my feeds all the time, and I'm not someone who scrolls that much. So I mean, really, you like in the top 10, 15 that I would see on there, and I'd be like, feels like you've got a listing a week or you have this incredible marketing. That's why I reached out on the show,
thank you.
certainly. But
Yeah, and I think now finally LinkedIn has kind of caught on to the whole social media trend. So they're trying to make it more like a Facebook feed type situation. They even like they've tried out stories. They're trying to have more creators come onto LinkedIn. They have like a whole creator I guess, like, I don't know if it's a committee or part of their company now that they want creators to come and use LinkedIn. So they're trying to make it more of a social platform and less just, obviously in the past, it was just like you post kind of your resume. And then if you're not looking for a job, you don't really go on there at all.
right.
Only when you're changing jobs or you want to see what someone is about or check their resume, you'd go on there. But now people actually go on there, post about what's going on in their business, in their lives. And it's becoming more and more of a social platform. And I think that, I think all business is trending in that way anyway. I think influencer marketing is more and more going to replace like regular advertising and marketing. And if you ask like the younger generation, like Gen Zs or even younger kids, they don't spend much time watching TV. They definitely don't watch TV commercials. They don't believe in any type of like advertisements, but they believe in what their influencers talk about. So like the influencers that they follow, whether it's lifestyle influencer, beauty influencer, workout influencer, real estate influencer, whatever that influencer represents or talks about in their whatever brands that they support, they believe in those influencers. And the influencers also have to be really careful about what brands they align with because they have built that trust with their audience. But I think more and more now that's going to be more of a trend, and companies are going to spend a lot more money on that influencer and the social media marketing compared to the traditional types of marketing.
That makes sense. And to speak about companies, again, when you think about company or corporate, you think about LinkedIn. And here's another a fun fact a lot of people might not know, but I mean, Google yourself, Google your name. What's the first link that pops up? It's LinkedIn. It's everybody's LinkedIn. They think it might be something else, but that's, I mean, if you're on there and you have any sort of presence, that's really what pops up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people might not know that. All right, switching gears for a quick second. The NAR 30 under 30, 2017, that was a big year for you.
Yes. So the National Association of Realtors honors 30 agents under the age of 30 each year. So I was awarded that honor in 2017, which I was obviously very proud of. And I'm proud to be part of the organization. So it's kind of a very close-knit group of people. Each year they add 30 more people, and all the past alumni, as we call it, are all very close with the new group every year. And each year we get together. So I'm actually going to Orlando next week. We're having our yearly meetup, and we kind of mastermind, we hang out, we network, and then it's been really rewarding for me just to have other top agents from around the country in my network, because we can do referrals. A lot of people move in and out of Los Angeles, so I send out referrals, I receive referrals, and also it's nice to have just other agents, similar age, similar backgrounds and experiences that I'm able to bounce ideas off of, because we work in different markets, so everyone is very open about sharing like marketing tips and what to do when you're having a certain type of conversation with the buyer or seller, and all of that.
How many people are expected to be in Orlando when you head down there next week?
I haven't checked because everyone always waits till the last second, but usually at least 300 or so will show up. Yeah, 200-300.
And you mentioned masterminding. I mean, that's a big thing, right? I mean, obviously in this business of ours, obviously the networking and getting together and just sharing best practices and competitive development, right? I mean, just saying, hey, what are you working on? What are you doing? And everybody's kind of looking at each other. But to your point, I mean, if you're all, feeling like there's this kismet, there's this community of the 30 under 30 forever. I mean, it sounds like you're happy to share. And happy to see everybody succeed. And that's such a big thing about real estate too, right? I mean, as long as this feeling of competition in so many of the businesses, it's a weird thing in real estate. I mean, there are so many real estate agents and so many lenders like myself, of course. And then there are so many clients, right? I mean, we should be rooting for everyone's success all the time. It shouldn't feel like this cutthroat industry like a lot of other industries are.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And, obviously it's great to network with people from other markets because you feel less competitive. But even within your own market, I always tell people, like, there's so many realtors. Like you said, I think there's 1.6 million realtors out there right now in the United States. But think about how many potential buyers and sellers there are out there, right? Way more than that. And every type of buyer or seller resonates and connects with a different type of agent. And that's why we're able to have different agents help different types of clients in the same market. One agent can't take over an entire city or entire market because not everyone is going to like their personality, like the way they do business, like the way they present themselves and relate to them. And at the end of the day, I think our business is very, very much so a relationship business. And it's about who they feel connected with, who they trust. And that's different for everyone's circumstances.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to throw out an acronym at you and another year. AREAA in the year 2025. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
So AREA is the Asian Real Estate Association of America. So we are a group of 18,000 real estate professionals across the country. And it was founded about 20 years ago with the goal of course, helping realtors network. But the main mission is to provide sustainable homeownership for underserved communities. So some of the policy initiatives that we focus on are like fair housing, alternative credit, because a lot of foreigners from other countries, when they move to the United States, they after working for a couple of years, they don't really have a credit history because they just never had credit cards. And honestly, a lot of Asian communities are kind of like against debt and credit, so it's not in their culture. So even when they come here, they're hesitant to build credit, use credit cards. So then when it comes time to get a loan, they're not able to qualify for a loan, even though they have, sometimes good, decent income, the down payment saved, they still can't qualify for a loan. So one of the initiatives that we're trying to fight for is alternative ways of grading credit so that people have opportunities to perhaps get alternative types of loans, even though they don't have a long credit history. So those are some of the initiatives that we're working on.
You're talking in my wheelhouse now. Get me excited here for a
Yes,
second.
exactly.
So this is interesting. So besides FICO, you're telling me that there should be alternative ways to grade somebody. I mean, if they don't otherwise have trade lines, as you're speaking about not getting credit cards or taking on debt in other ways, got to find other ways to qualify.
Exactly, and give people the opportunity to do so. And I think one of the things that we also, or especially is important to us, is I think the market out there has the perception that Asians are all wealthy and they come with their cash offers and outbid everyone and all of that. And that is certainly the case in some situations, but that's a very, very small percentage of actual immigrants, right? That's just the ones that you hear stories about and you watch the movies about or whatever, and you hear that on the news, but it's definitely not really the case. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, only since the early 2000s have people actually been able to even have that land lease ownership in China. So that's why they like investing outside of outside of China, and especially in the United States, because they're able to actually own the physical property forever, pass it down generation after generation. So it's really important to them, and that's why they want to come here. But of course, you hear the news about that top 0.1% of very rich people that made it, that come here and outbid everyone. But there's a lot of normal families like my family, immigrants that come here with absolutely nothing, and they have to work really hard to get to that. And so we're kind of like representing those communities, not just Asians, but all underserved communities. So we closely work with NAREP, some of the other trade organizations as well that support other ethnicities. And so I've been part of this organization for many years now. I've been on the national board for 4 years. So we run 3 years in advance, but this year I'm running for 2025 national president.
That is incredible. Good luck to you. And I think, and 3 years down the line. So what does it all entail over the next 36 months to get to that position?
Yeah. So I think they want to give you time after you're elected to just like make sure everything is ready for you to like kind of leave and travel a lot, because as the president of the organization, you're kind of the face of the organization, and we have chapters all around the country. So, when they have events, they want the president to attend as many of them as possible. And we have so many chapters, so we literally have events nearly every single day. So the president, the year of their presidency, they spend a good chunk of the year traveling around and visiting all the local chapters. So I think they want to give you like the first year to just kind of prepare your business, prepare your family, prepare your life for that, and kind of get ready for that. And then in 2024, if elected, I will be serving as vice president. And then the following year in 2025, I would be president.
Amazing. Yeah, I want to circle back to something else that you had said, because it really struck a chord about different ways to qualify for a loan. Bank of America just this past week announced there's zero. I'm calling it a 000 loan. So down payment, zero closing costs, and zero mortgage insurance.
Yes.
And they're obviously hyper targeting African American and Hispanic communities, but their loans are for everybody, as you mentioned.
Right.
And a big part of what they're talking about in the qualification process is not about trade lines. It's not necessarily about credit. It's looking at other things. I mean, even as little as a utility bill. And for those, again, first time home buyers, but an underserved community, and looking for their slice of the American dream. And it sounds like something that you're, aligned with fighting for. So.
Yeah, 100%. It's very exciting. I know it's like a pilot program, and I think a lot of people misunderstood the headlines because it said they thought that it was only available for Hispanic and African American buyers, but that's not true. They're just trying to kind of focus on those communities, so anyone can qualify if they buy in those communities. So we're excited to see. I think everyone's waiting to see which communities are going to qualify. There's certain ones in Los Angeles that will qualify, but I think it's it's interesting. It's a great step in the right direction. I'm sure there will be a lot of kinks that they have to kind of work out. But
Always are, right?
yeah, but Bank of America, I think, donated a ton of money to NAREP, and they're really focusing on that underserved communities initiative as well, which I think is amazing. It's definitely a step in the right direction.
No doubt. It'd be interesting to see if other lenders follow suit, certainly. Okay, so last 6 months, as we all know, a lot of market volatility, a lot of changes. Have
Yes.
you seen a drop off in business, or are you expecting a bigger one? Or what do you think's, if you don't mind answering that question, the best you can, and what do you think's coming on the pike for all of us in the next year?
Yeah. I mean, definitely, I saw a slowdown for sure. I'm sure most agents have. Anyone who says they haven't is probably just lying. But obviously, 6 months, not maybe even more than 6 months ago now, 9 to 12 months ago, and end of 2021, beginning of 2022, things were still crazy. Still seeing 20, 30, 40 offers. I think the most I ever saw once was like 70 something offers on
Wow.
on one property, right? So it's just crazy.
Just to be the winner of that, just to say like what it was.
Yeah.
Like,
So I
you're
mean,
the winning good of over 70 people. Yeah,
it was cool to be a listing agent at the time, although it was a lot of work to go through all the
course.
offers and try to like make spreadsheets and figure out what the differences were and then explain it all to your seller. So that was actually really challenging. It sounded like amazing, but it was actually
Oh
challenging.
yeah. Oh no, it's 10 times the amount of work for you, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's definitely slowed down. I'm seeing like one offer, maybe three at most on a really good property. A couple of listings had to do like I haven't done too many price drops. I've just been waiting and it's taking a little bit longer. So I've been telling my clients, like, if we're lucky, we still sell it really fast. And that's happened. Like out of my last, let's say 5 listings, I think 2 of them still went over. One of them went at asking. One of them just went slightly under. So, I mean, I think the market, I haven't really seen a huge drop. I wouldn't say the prices have really dropped, but the number of buyers has definitely dropped off. And
Sure.
so a lot less activity. And so you have to
Are you expect what what do you think though? Are you expecting more of a drop off in price, or
I actually am not. I mean, it's kind of hard to say right now because everyone keeps saying the rates are going to go up more, the rates are going to go up more, but it kind of feels like the rates have stabilized off a little bit right now. So I kind of feel like the rest of this year might just kind of stay around the same as how it is now, and we'll see what happens. And then, of course, some of the headlines are saying Fannie Mae, I think last week, said that they think it's going to go down to 4.65 next year. So I think unless something crazy happens or the interest rates suddenly jump up to like 7-8%, that's for sure going to cause a huge slowdown. But right now things are looking kind of stable and normalizing. So I'm hoping that it'll just kind of stay stable for the next 6 months or so.
let's all hope you're right.
Yeah.
Jamie Tian, award-winning realtor here in Los Angeles, running for REA president 2025. Certainly wish you the best of luck. Really greatly appreciate you coming on today. This was amazing. I think we touched on a lot of topics. And again, thank you. A lot of fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it.